Councilmember Pelican.
Here.
Vice Mayor Muller.
Here.
Councilmember Rollins.
Here.
Mayor Titus.
Here. Okay, we have three certificates of proclamations tonight. So let's see. The first one will be for Green Ridge Landscaping. Are they here?
The constables are here.
And what the certificate says is a certificate of appreciation is hereby presented to Dirk and Cynthia Onstein, Green Ridge Landscaping, for donation of weekly landscaping services to maintain the Town of Paradise Gateway and Neal Road and Skyway. And just so that you can see it, it's hot off the press.
Got it done just in time.
This will be posted so that the people going by can see. We thank you very much for your donation, your time and effort. The next one is for the Rotary Club for their certificate of appreciation as for their donation of $3,500 to purchase the equipment and to launch the Town of Paradise Live video stream. So is anybody here from Rotary? Seeing none, then we'll move on to the next one. And this one's a proclamation for the Run for Life. And basically it says,
Relay for life.
Relay for
I'm
Life.
sorry. Yeah.
Okay, Relay for Life. Whereas cancer is a group of diseases characterized by uncontrolled growth and spread of abnormal cells, which, if not controlled, can result in premature death. And whereas cancer is predicted to strike 1 in every 3 Americans sometime in their lifetime. And whereas the American Cancer Society is voluntary community-based coalition of local citizens dedicated to eliminating cancer as a major health problem through financial support and education awareness. And whereas the Relay for Life event financially benefits the American Cancer Society's research and patient support programs and educationally benefits our local citizens. And whereas the American Cancer Society Relay for Life in Paradise on June 22nd and 23rd is a community event that allows an opportunity to network with businesses, associates, family, and friends with the same goal of making a difference in the battle of against cancer. And whereas the color purple is the signature color of the American Cancer Society's Relay for Life event, signifying the passion that cancer survivors and their families and loved ones feel for the eradication of this disease. And the Relay for Life event is also recognized by the Purple Ribbon Campaign to show support to those individuals living with cancer and to honor those individuals that have lost their lives to the dreaded disease of cancer. Now, therefore, I, Timothy Titus, Mayor of the Town of Paradise, hereby declare the weekend of June 22nd and 3rd as Relay for Life weekend in the Town of Paradise. Is there anyone here from Relay? Here you go. Oops.
Thank you so much.
And then we have a presentation by Chief Combs.
Mayor Titus, council members, citizens of Paradise, thanks for the privilege of being here. Is the auto light switch there somewhere? Because you're going to want to be able to see. All right, this is the 2000. Can you see behind me? No. I don't want to get too far away from the mic. How's that? Does that work? Fire season outlook. Basil, and you can say his last name, Ubercheski, put it together. He's one of our fire weather meteorologists from the U.S. Forest Service and Predictive Services. But what this presentation covers is the outlook we have for this summer. And it's a seasonal outlook, of course. we're going to cover the recent precipitation, our totals, and our emphasis on spring. The presentation, we're also going to cover possibility of the drought that they're talking about, what our snowpack meant to us this year, and the current state of the fuels, as in what burns compared to our normal status. And then, of course, expected weather and what we're looking for in the long-term outlook. So real quick, for those of you that don't know what Butte County looks like, there it is. Paradise is stuck here in this upper corner. This is last month's precipitation meeting, the April. We didn't update it with May's yet, but it wasn't much except for on the Panther Fire. As most of you know, we had a major fire on May 1st called the Panther Fire up outside of the Butte Meadows area, and it burned like it was in August. And as you can see, the colors here, down here is yellow and green that are right around here are what's considered 100% for that month, which of course is over in the Mendocino side. We in Butte County in this general area of the North State, we're in 25 to 50% of normal for our percentage of rainfall during that month. This is the May month that was added up to the 20th, and you can see it doesn't change much. We're still down here in the red zone of 5 to 25% of normal for the Butte County area. Things increased a lot for the Tahoe Basin in those areas, and they needed it drastically, and we'll show you that on a later map. This is the drought monitor, and as you can see by the colors, we're talking about possible drought. Moderate is what they're talking about in the future, and they're talking Southern Cal and the lower part of the states may be in a severe drought. And then of course abnormally dry, and this is out in the Arizona border down here. This is just another look at the drought monitor that talks about the different things. I'll try to make it easy for you. The colors make it the easiest for you. And they're just talking drought moderate for our area, and that was at May 7th of this year is when they predicted that. Of course, this is the biggest telltale sign for us right here. Driest January through April at Redding Airport for 49 years. In 1964, they started keeping track of the rainfall up at the Redding Airport, where our headquarters is for the North State. And as you can see right over here, we come across here, and percent of normal is this year for the 4-month total was 6.86 inches of rain was all there was. And it was 37.4% of normal. And the normal is about 18 inches of rain. So we're way behind. What we got in this little piece of May and stuff in the high country helped, but down low in the valleys and the flats did not help much. Just another look at the rainfall, and as you can see down here, this color is not all red and dark red where we're at, which is minus 15 to minus 18 inches of normal. Some of it is minus 12 to 15, minus 10 to 12, but as you get the picture, you realize we're a lot lower than we normally are in rainfall in the North State. Snowpack. The classic story on this is the January 1 snowpack. When you look at it, you say, holy cow, we're 110% of normal, some places 150. We all thought we were going to have a great wet winter up there and have a great snowpack. Then things tapered off, and you look over at this side over here, and we're down to 50% of normal on April 1st. In fact, some of the folks that took the snowpack in the January area in February, when they went back to take it in April, they still found the holes that they drilled to take the snowpack from the previous time because it hadn't snowed on top of it enough to cover it up. So that tells you something right there. This is the look at northern Sacramento Valley in a normal year. Greenery in the background of the oak trees and everything. And then this is what's coming right now as it's already dried out in the last month. This picture was taken almost a month ago. This is an area called Hat Creek at about 3,000 feet. Late April, usually green and everything. And then just down the road is Hatchet Mountain, which is 4,000 feet, which when this was taken on May 14th, usually still has snow on it. And as you can see, the grass is already headed out and turning brown in places. So what that leads us to is what we call our energy release component. And it's a big word for if you burn up all the fuel, how much energy does it release in BTUs? And we all understand BTUs from the heaters we have at home and how much they suck down and how much they use and all that energy efficiency. This right here was this year. The red line is the maximums we've ever had. And as you can tell, approaching May 1st, we were at the highest energy release component. In other words, if we'd started a fire and the amount of energy we released from all the fuels we burned was higher than it ever had been in history. The average line is right down here on the black line. And so we were headed for a very dry year, and that's why the May 1st, the Panther Fire happened. As you can tell, there's May 1st. That was the peak. we started chasing fire, and we got the storm that came in and brought in some precipitation. And if you notice, it's a very violent line on the energy release component, and the reason being is because it deals with the current moisture. So it rained a little bit, it went way down. It's automatically drying out, it's coming way back up. Without getting too in-depth to it, it will do that most of summer, but we are already back on the rise back up here in this general area above the average for right now. This is what we call live fuels. Those are the things that are growing in green. And how we get this is we go out and we have certain areas every year that we take cuttings, we weigh the fuel, we put it in an oven and we dry every bit of moisture we can out of that fuel, and then we reweigh it, and of course we do simple 8th grade math, we get a percentage, and we get a live fuel index. And what this tells you is that the minimums we've had, I'm going to restart in 10 minutes, Mark. So what this tells us, and it's a 3-day period, that it just shows is our live fuel index is normally up in the 2012 in these areas. The average is way up here and rising. What that means is in the springtime, when you're looking right here, the grasses all are growing and the brush is grabbing moisture out of the ground, and it's getting wetter and wetter, as you can tell. What happened this year, though, is we were already on the downward trend and not increasing any more in May. Since that time period, we've gone back up a tiny little bit. I don't have that slide in here. It goes up just a little bit towards the normal. But what it tells you is it's had successive years of not enough moisture in that January, February, March period for us. Now, this is the classic one for you, El Nino, La Nina. Everybody talks about it. Some of you are wondering what they are. El Nino and La Nina are predicted based on the temperature of ocean waters. We are right up here in the California area, in Baja California right there. This equator stream right here is what we call it. And El Nino is warm, and that's signified by the red lines that basically says it's 2.5 to 3 degrees above normal. When I was a firefighter, I'm going to date myself, back in the early 80s, there was a professor at UC Davis who used to produce a big package of about 20 pages that talked about this every year, and people thought he was a little bit off kilter. And he always predicted some of our worst fire season. We go, what's he know about ocean temperatures? What do they have to do about fire season? What they predict is, they found out that they predict when this temperature is high in El Nino, and it means different things to different places. What it means is, to us on the west coast, El Nino, when it's very warm down here, packs a lot of moisture, and we usually have wet winters. Those are those years where we have a lot of water. La Nina, different story, exact opposite, is we have a cold area in that equator section, a couple of degrees below normal, and it is usually a cold, dry winter. So everybody says, Rob, what's it going to be? We go to this page, and this is all of the models. In case you were ever wondering, the United States and a lot of other countries have thousands of temperature monitors, buoys floating out in the ocean. What this is this tells you that El Nino up here, La Nina down here, and most of the buoys are floating right in the middle, which means they're not expecting any change in La Nina or El Nino for us for the future, which means we're not expecting a wetter than normal winter, and we're not expecting a drier than normal winter. It doesn't mean anything great to us. When we get down in these areas where we see it very cold, La Nina or El Nino, we know that the weather is going to change drastically. So right now we should stick to a normal pattern. So what does this mean for us? This is a temperature probability or an outlook for a month. And what it means is they're saying that below normal is what they're talking about in this area. And you're saying, that hasn't proved outright. This prediction was made May 16th. We've been warmer than normal. So that is why if you talk to Basil and these folks, they don't put a lot of credence in all these nationwide maps, because they never know exactly if they're going to come out, because it's such a large geographic picture. So it's still showing us below normal in the 3-month outlook for temperature probability, so above or below normal. Then we get into this precipitation. Now this definitely tells you something that we are way below normal. and they plan on us staying below normal for the next month, which we have. And this is just taking a 3-month outlook, looking farther in the 3-month area, and they're showing that the area up in the north part of the states is going to drop below normal in the Washington, Oregon area. So, what does it all mean? Well, fuel and fire potential, and if you're wondering where we are again, we're tucked right in here in Butte County. So you're down in the front country, right below Paradise and all this area is, we're looking at above normal large fire potential. At the current time, our air tankers and stuff are flying a lightning, what we call a sleeper. We got hit by lightning the other day, thousands of strikes in the North State. We had 11 fires in Butte County yesterday. We caught all the ones we could find. And then, of course, we've been flying our air attack on a grid pattern every couple of hours for the last couple of days looking for them. They found one right up below Cohasset on the Tehama County side out there by the power lines. If any of you remember the fire in 1990, I believe it was 1 or 2, the Campbell fire. Started in the same general area. They're flying the crews in. That's how remote it is right now. The engines can't get there from here. So it's growing. They've hit it with tankers. That fire is hopefully being caught at 5 to 10 acres. But the potential is here this summer for large major fires. And there it is throughout the state. And they're saying valid for May 2013, looking at the weather. And this is just a closer picture of it. Butte County being right there, saying the high country is not too much above normal. Then as we move into June, they're saying the whole north half of the state and Nevada are looking way above normal for large fire, damaging fires. This area up in the Lassen Modoc country has had one of the lowest years ever on record for precipitation and moisture. They've been dry all winter long in that area. The first measurable moisture they got was in these last storms that came through a couple of weeks ago. And with that, lightning potential. You look at California and what we just had, the upper part, we're above normal for the lightning potential in mid-June, and this graph seems to have paid off because guess what we've been getting? We've been getting lightning, which is above normal for this time of year. So this is looking at the screen. It says July to August down here on the bottom. You just notice it just moves into a greater area up into Oregon, Washington, and out into Nevada. In California, basically, is almost all red except for this area. And you wonder why, don't you? It's a central valley where fruits and vegetables are grown and water is flowing. So it doesn't list in the state responsibility or the wildland environment for major fires. And then this is just more of another map of significant potential. In May was above normal, all of the southern region down here. And then, of course, these green areas say below normal. But then, of course, we move forward into June. Those areas all change, and we get the same different predictive. It's just another way of looking at the map. So with what you see is into July and August, all the way up into Oregon, Idaho, and those areas, we may have a very bad summer. Any questions? This is a normal year, by the way, at 7,000 feet on Mount Shasta. It didn't look like that in this year. It was dry. No questions?
So what do you do with, how do you change what you guys do with this information?
What happened with us is because of the May 1st fire and some other major fires in Southern California a couple of days before in April, we went to what is normally our maximum preparedness in July in May. So the other thing you've noticed is we cut all burning off in Butte County and the surrounding counties either June 1st or June 15th instead of waiting until July 1. So we're taking aggressive moves to take away the potential for fire starts. The other one is educating people on how bad it possibly is. And this little bit of moisture you see with this thunderstorm, it says, oh, it's great, it's wet out there. It lasts a very short time. As soon as the sun and the wind get on it, it dries up and it's gone. And the fuels are already dead and cured. They're not gonna grow back from and change any of the environment we have.
And then one positive thing was just informed us that our wildland fire engine is back in service. Ready for use and ready to be used by wildfire.
Yes. We had it staffed the other day on the staffing pattern. We just took it off this morning when we started getting more fires. And it's dollar driven too. So, any other questions?
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, we have no items deferred from the previous meeting. These two items, please, consent calendar. Following council concurrence to waive the entire reading of the two proposed ordinances and reading by title only. The ordinances referenced in items 3G and H. One roll call vote will be taken for all items placed on the consent calendar.
Does council concur to waive the reading of the entire ordinances?
I want to pull 3G out.
And I'd like to pull 3C off.
Okay. 3G and 3C. For discussion or for a separate vote?
Discussion.
3C, discussion, and 3G.
For separate.
Okay, the ordinances that we are looking at to adopt Town Ordinance 529 is an ordinance of the town relating to noise control. Approval allows for an administrative fee to be charged to recover costs of the police department response to repeated violations. And 3H is to introduce Town Ordinance 530, an ordinance amending sections of the Paradise Municipal Code relating to bingo games. Approval would provide minor revision to language in the eligible organizations section and align bingo prize value to the $500 limit as allowed by the California Penal Code.
Well, you know what, hey, I want to do a correction. I know it's not 3G. 3, yeah.
Bingo one?
No, not the big one.
It's
Okay, you want 3G?
You want- you
for
know,
a
wait,
separate-
Is it 3G?
No,
Oh,
it's
I'm
not.
looking at minutes, I'm sorry. It is 3G.
Okay.
This is, it's minutes last month.
Can I ask a question? I thought we were going to change the language of this one to the bingo to be just whatever the state is, we wanted to bring it back.
Yeah, that's what
Right.
it says
I
in
understand.
the ordinance itself.
So we don't have to keep adjusting it.
Right. It just says it's just equal to the amount in state law and across the section of the state law.
Because stated in the paragraph for the agenda, just for clarification, so people know what we're doing.
And also 3D and E should be numbered 1328 and 1329. And I have one card on 3G.
Okay.
We pulled that off.
Wait a minute, well, we're not.
Okay, so we'll hold that off.
Hold that one for 3G.
Yeah, can we
You're gonna wanna
just,
have
I think what we need
discussion
to do
on
is vote on the items that weren't pulled. So,
Well, he's got one item he wants to discuss only.
right, okay,
And then, because he wants to, it'll still be voted with the pack.
okay.
Well, possibly, yeah. On 3C, my question is, and I bring this to staff, they're asking us to pay $10,000 to Chico State for this. Is that, are we getting our money's worth on that is my question. I know they have maps and stuff like that, but it, in these times, I just wonder if we can renegotiate that with them. I think that's something we've done for several years now, if that's correct. And I don't think that there's major changes we got to do, but maybe I'm totally off base with that. But my concern is the amount of money.
Well, I had Josh here to speak on this item, but apparently he had to go to the police department emergency that he has to deal with right now. But what this contract is, and I checked into it a little bit more this afternoon after you came in and spoke to me, because I had the same questions about this particular item. In fact, I was going to pull the contract on the agenda, but Josh was on vacation last week, because I did want to make sure that we were getting the bang for our buck. We haven't done a lot of changes, parcel maps, different things that we might think that we would need this contract for. But the GIS at Chico State is like us contracting out for this service. It's like having a GIS department or a GIS person on staff. So they do all the mapping of the information, the spatial information, the geotechnical information. And some of that is used for fire maps, for dispatch, for police, also for some of the lists that we do on our ordinances when we have to run address lists. So that said, I can still, if the council wants me to, see if we can negotiate a better contract. I would not recommend eliminating it entirely, but we can go down, Josh and I have a meeting with Chico State and see if there's something that we can do to lessen that. So if we want to maybe pull this one, bring it back, or just have the council allow me to see if we can get a better contract. And then the council just approve that.
I would appreciate if we could do that. Just at least talk, yeah, pull it, and then
Josh is here.
let's have the discussion.
Josh is here.
Josh, just want this.
So the question is, Josh, can we go and renegotiate this contract with Chico State and see if there's something that we can do? And can you talk a little bit about more some of the specifics that this contract does for the town and the benefit that we are receiving from this?
So the GIC provides us with GIS services, and that means anything from address points to street layers to evacuation zones to fire map book pages, a little bit of everything. It's kind of hard to sum up everything they do for us, but that's the quickest to me.
So let me ask you this. So when we use when we do our evacuations and we go through City Watch, if we get our new contract with this new company, this new software company, would we need new information from them, or can they use the old information that we have?
I mean, you can always use the old information, but that information changes monthly. So say you loaded up, 2012's streets and addresses and phone numbers in there, well, you're only notifying the citizens who lived in those homes in 2012. If they move, you may be evacuating them when they live on the other side of town, as opposed to their new location off of the east side of town.
Doesn't this, the GIS have the assessor's parcel map? That's one of the overlays and,
Yeah.
and the ownership, so we can just click on something. That's one of the things that does change, because I know LAFCO, which I sit on, that has a similar contract,
Yeah.
which we pay a lot more than the town does.
It is a
Because it's for
very
the
cheap
entire county, of
contract.
course.
I do know that, but still.
But that's where it's used a lot, where there are partial maps of borders and sometimes different government agencies, if you want to see where PID is, make sure that their map is the same as our maps, things like that. There's a lot of those. Because there are the PID water lines.
Pretty much everyone in Butte County uses the GIC.
Yeah.
So we all feed our data into the GIC, and then they give it back to us once it's been activated and updated and all that. One example, if you call 911, the anti-alley information goes into a streets database. It finds the address point, and it shows dispatch right where your house is hopefully physically located. The GIC, if we find that there's a discrepancy in the data, we email the GIC, hey, can you move the address point to 200 yards off the west side of the parcel, so that dispatch knows better where your house is actually located, and not just an address on a 40-acre parcel. You don't have to do those kind of updates, but those updates, if an officer's arriving on this one road, and the only way over to the other side, they have to drive 6 minutes around. If we're not doing those updates, you're, potentially adding a lot of response time.
So we could potentially get a contract for, say, $7,000 without some of those extra things, maybe. But those extra things
Sure.
are really important, like what you just
A lot of them are very important. And we do, it costs a lot of money to have a GIS department. Chico, for example, had quite a few people. They're now looking at using the GIC like we do. A $10,000 contract is not very much of one person.
And everybody uses fire, police, and, because I sat in dispatch, I don't know if you guys have been there. When a call comes in, it's amazing, all the data and information that's instantaneous right there. And now with the units in the cars, it's also in the cars. And this is, never mind the planning stuff and all that stuff that's extremely valuable. I think the biggest thing is the public safety aspect of it.
I went from saying, let's see if we can hold off a year, to saying, no, we can't. I understand we need it. I'm not trying to eliminate it. Everybody's renegotiating everything at this point, and especially with the cities and counties and everything. So I just like the opportunity for us to go down there. I'm not looking for, lessening our services unless there's something they say, you know, you really don't, you haven't used this for 3 years, you don't need this part of it. Maybe, I don't even know if that's even possible,
Our
but at least
contracts,
have the talk.
our contract's very vague. The way it usually works is that at the end of the year, if they have unspent hours, they'll call us up and say, that, okay, is there any data that you would like cleaned, a special project? You know, is there anything in next year that you'd like to do that we can move those hours in that direction? They're very
They
flexible.
give us
with
money for them?
So they give us credit.
Yeah, they're flexible with the contract.
But also-
I know we've never, since I've been with the town over 8 years, they've never increased our price. So, I'm
Maybe
assuming,
there's room there. I mean, that's what I'm saying, maybe there's some room there we can.
So could we like put this thing, you know, have you guys have a chance to go meet with them and then like look at this during our budget meeting? If we have to do it before July, is there a deadline on July?
July 1, our contract expires, but like, they're flexible. I'm sure they'd be open to work.
Put it on July, the budget meeting. Okay, is that, we have concurrence for a couple of days?
Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
we'll put it-
All right, so we'll move
Appreciate
item
it.
3C to the budget meeting at the end of the month.
Josh, just for clarification, the 10,000, is it just for the work they do for us, but or is it for maintaining that database which we constantly use?
Both.
Okay, all right, so I just,
It's a good
yeah,
deal.
because it's a good deal, but I just want to make sure we understand that it's maintaining that database, which would be very expensive for us to do on our own.
Private companies, which we used to use a private company, it was a lot of money. So,
Like 60,000.
I don't remember, but it was a lot. This was a significant
It
savings.
was a big savings, yeah, I was on the council.
Any of these services available, Judge, are any of these services available like for Butte County or state, like CAL FIRE? Chief, you still in it? Does CAL FIRE get their mapping from the state or is it available through the state or is it?
Believe it or not, we pay these same GIS folks.
Right on.
They input all over the county and we share the data. So when we dispatch a call in Paradise and say if our engine company goes to a fire, I know where Mr. Waters' house is, and gives them a lat and longitude, they put it in, pull it right up and go, it's just outside the town, it's in the state responsibility area. It's all shared data, and you're getting a screaming deal because we pay a whole lot more. We're in the $50,000 to $60,000 for this information in the county.
Just for Butte County? Yeah,
But it's still a great deal on our side.
Right.
We've gone in to renegotiate, find out what we've got and everything, but they give us everything.
that's a lot bigger area than Paradise.
And it uploads a ton of information that is constantly updated, so you don't have to guess. If you come in and say, I want to annex into the town of Paradise, and everything goes through and they approve it, when it goes in, our dispatchers pull it up, and a week or so later, it's updated on the map. It says, nope, that's in the county now, that's in the town now, it's not in the city.
Well, we don't want out. We just.
No.
We're just trying to get a better price, that's all.
All right, thank you. So let's get into, the only item then is 3G has been pulled. We'll do a roll call vote on everything else. Are there any other cards on these? All in 3G?
No,
Okay.
no other cards.
Well, what are we doing with are we then pulling this 3C off?
3C steam. Okay.
3C is off until the budget meeting.
Okay, all right, I wanted to clarify that.
So you get a vote on that or just concurrence?
Concurrent.
We have concurrence, okay, so I'll move that we approve the consent items 3A, 3B, D, E, F, and H as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all of us, go ahead.
Roll call vote, Councilmember Rowland,
Aye.
Pelletin,
Yeah.
Water,
Aye.
Rawlings,
Aye.
and Mayor Titus.
Aye. All right. Item 3G.
You got a card on this item?
I have a card from Fred Aldridge.
We're here to oppose 3G, and the argument in favor of it seems to be you want to reimburse police for the time spent to enforce the law. And you say it's going to help stop the bleeding in the general fund. I've heard that several times. Our arguments are that we all pay taxes. Much of our taxes are directed directly to police services. Most of us has seldom, if ever, even called the police, but we still pay taxes for the security of knowing that the police will be there when we need it. So if there is an offense, where a citation can be written, and on conviction, you'll collect a fine, and that also helps pay for our police. That goes to the general fund. So to us, this is just an added fee to enhance a shrinking general fund. We understand that. We all know that $85 of reimbursement will do absolutely nothing to correct the scope of the budget problems this town has. Stop the bleeding? Not much. So, as you guys are all aware, there was a similar fee proposed about a year ago. It was for DUI accidents, and it was a recovery fee. And that fee was voted down by council in a public hearing after a lot of public discussion. That vote was led by then Mayor White. Probably some of you remember this. And he said this is the slippery slope to placing recovery fees on every infraction. We're clearly at that slope. If this fee is passed, what's next? Speeding tickets, running stop signs, texting and driving, talking on a cell phone. All of these are happening, all of which happen much more frequently than a noise complaint, and all of which take police enforcement time. These types of added fees will do nothing to return the 6 officers that we are currently short, and in fact will only cause more paperwork for the PD. Mr. Bull and I had a little conversation today, and had a couple disagreements on a couple of things, but I think at the end of it, one thing that we did agree on is why are we wasting time, council time, public time, staff time, talking about things that will do so little to help this town's budget crisis? We just respectfully ask that you reject this and any future recovery fees. Thank you for your time.
Else?
It's the only part.
We'll close, bring it back.
Okay, I asked to have this pulled off because last time when we talked about it, I had some questions about it, about the first of all, for the public's information, we already passed the fee schedule. These fees are already in there. And this thing that's on the agenda tonight is simply to give the authority to be able to impose the fee. The fee was passed last month. And what I found out in doing some research is there was a fee in there, but there was no mechanism to collect it. And it was an exorbitant, it was a penalty, it wasn't even a cost recovery. But my concern last month was the fact that under the ordinance on noise, it says you can tell people to be quiet, you can issue an administrative fine, or you can refer it to the town attorney. That is in the current ordinance. There's no provision to do cost recovery. That's what this action is for. My concern last month was the fact that it said on the very first offense, you could bill $88.22 or $82.88, whatever it was. And I didn't like that because there was, on the alarm system, there's a first time's free and stuff like that. And in thinking about this, when I saw the agenda last week and got it, there's a lot of stuff in the fee schedule that I think has to be cleaned up. There's nothing in the language of the law that says how often an offense, first, second, third now, it talks about stuff. Is that in a year, in a month, in a lifetime? It doesn't say. There's just a lot of things that aren't said. And if we're going to pass a law that everybody's going to be subject to, I think everything has to be defined in that law. And there's a lot of loopholes in this. So that's why it has to be pulled off. Because although I voted for the first reading of this thing, I thought we pulled the fees off too. But apparently we didn't. I had it pulled off because I have those concerns about it. I talked to former Mayor White today, and, what he said, by the way, in the fee schedule that we adopted last month, the DUI recovery fees are in there, so that's a neat point. But what he said, and asked the town manager the question earlier, and this is no disrespect to our police department, our police chief, or the police officers. They do an outstanding job with limited resources. But where does it stop? I know I got CHP got me for talking on my cell phone and driving. It's $157 fine. Where does it stop? Domestic violence? I mean, I was told by the city man, oh, well, we'd never do that. Well, we were never going to do noise control either. When we brought up the DUI thing last year, that's all we were talking about. Those things that required emergency responses that took police away from their normal duties. I tend to concur with some of the points that Fred made. Part of the job of a police officer in this town is to enforce the laws. I'm somebody that calls a lot about noise complaints. I have had tweakers living next door to me for the last 15 years. Last week at 3:30 in the morning, my wife and I were woke up by somebody cleaning their yard, which is 10 feet away from our bedroom window. The police come out and they tell them to quiet down, and they're generally compliant. So the administrative fee is in there. There's a fine in there. It's already built in. I asked it to be pulled off because of the consent calendar. We usually have things on there because we're going to concur on all of it, and I'm not going to concur with this tonight. So that's it.
Any other comments?
Yes, I would like to say that the fee schedule has been approved, and this particular fee for the noise ordinance is not designed to stop the bleeding, or it's not designed to make money. It's designed to be a deterrent. It's designed to get the police officer an opportunity to use his discretionary powers. And of course, I feel that when you drive to San Francisco and you go to those HOV lanes and you see a sign that says high occupancy vehicle lane between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. occupied by 2 people, it's lawful. So it's kind of like that. If you don't have 2 people in your car, are you going to drive in the HOV lane? Probably not.
Not the $371 fine.
That's a $371 fine. That's a deterrent. So if you are inclined to have a loud party and you know that you're going to be facing a citation, and on the second offense you're going to be facing a fee, that's a deterrent. So I feel like it will deter recidivism and those who are inclined to have loud parties. And police officer gets called to your house. First time, it's, we all pay taxes. I've heard that one a lot of times too. So do I, so do all of us up here. We want the best bang for our tax dollar. But the point I want to make, if I don't say anything else, this is not designed to make money, because it would not even begin to stop the bleeding. So it's a deterrent, and that's all it is. Personally, I feel like if you're not one of those who want to be breaking that law, like you're not going to break the HOV law, and you have nothing to worry about, you get to keep your money. Isn't that nice? That's it. Thank you very much for being here.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
If you run a stop sign, you get cited, you get a fine. Why not a deterrent on that? Why not a fee to recover that police officer's time to write that citation?
Well, I've been a police officer for about 20 years, 18 years, something like that. And you don't have to write a ticket. You get out of the car, stop, get out of the car, you can tell them.
Works that way with the noise ordinance.
Well, that's your choice, I guess, but the police officer
But
needs.
what I'm saying is, I'm just bringing back the issue of the slippery slope. Will the next one be anybody that runs a stop sign, will we have a recovery fee on that for the time that it takes? Well, you shake your heads no.
Those aren't allowed.
But the DUI was also voted down about a year ago, and now it's in the fee schedule.
Well,
So,
But that's under state law. The
I
council doesn't need to
understand.
do anything to collect money on.
Dwight, I understand that you can
It's
do
state
it.
law. I think it was brought to the council just as a courtesy to see if the council wanted the police to start enforcing in that manner.
I
fact, it's
understand that
cheaper.
you can do it. I understand that you can do this. I'm asking you, should you do this? And should you do it for every offense?
well, we're talking about noise ordinance, that's it? I'm
Well,
not,
we're not gonna go into speculation.
Well,
Yes,
one of the
This
things,
is taken way beyond what,
slippery slope thing,
you know,
Me too.
yeah. I don't think anybody out there would support turning around and trying to use this as on everything, single thing. And,
My understanding, this was taking it from a punitive type situation to a cost recovery, is that right? And
Yeah.
actually, this brings the fees
It was-
down from what that's
It-
were before?
What
It was
it is
punitive
there,
before.
I want to hear from the, hang on a second.
It was punitive the way it was set up, because the first offense was a certain amount, then it ratcheted up for the second, third offenses. And you can't do that under law, because their cost should always be the same, no matter how many offenses you have. The recovery cost is based on the time and the cost to the town to actually enforce the law. So that's why it needed to be changed. And then there was nothing in the noise ordinance that permitted this type of fee. So it needed to be inserted into the ordinance, and that's why it's before you this evening,
But-
because you have to have the council say.
Dwight, okay, in the noise ordinance, no fee, in the noise ordinance, it says that you can tell the people to quiet down. The three things that can be done, punishments, tell them to quiet down, $100 administrative fee, or refer it to the town attorney. There was also these, the second and third offense, punitive fees, 200 and something, 500 and something, for police, but there was no mechanism to collect that, and that's what we're saying, that was punitive. So they're doing this cost recovery. There was always a $100 fine, and that goes up. A second offense is
My
300.
understanding is those fees have been reduced significantly in this new proposal.
Those fees, yeah, they've been reduced to $82. That's in addition to the $100 fine.
More than that.
The $100 fine, $82 is what they're gonna charge. There's no mechanism in there to say, if you show up on the second offense or the third offense, whether it's a week later, whether it's the same night, are you gonna be able to go back and charge the $82 for the first time you showed up, for each time you've been there, or what? I mean, it's to the officer's discretion. I mean,
No, you could
there's
only
nothing
charge-
outlined in, wait a minute, but in the alarm code, everything is outlined. Second, third offense, this is what the fee would be for the officer to show up. Okay, now we voted that down, it hasn't come back yet, but in there we specified it. In this one, nothing is specified. It's just, here you go, you can collect $82.
Is that true, Dwight?
Well, it's set forth as $82 for the police officer's time, and there's a calculation that's done. But the administrative citation will be used to enforce this, not a criminal citation. And the administrative citation that has something, has a hearing attached to it if the person wants it. And within 10 days, you can request a hearing on the administrative citation. That requires a hearing officer, that requires personnel to stop doing everything they're doing and start dealing with the hearing that is needed because a person has requested it. This person then is convicted or found to be liable for that violation, and the town would expend maybe $300 to $800, depending on the circumstances of that hearing, and would collect $100 fine.
When code enforcement writes an administrative citation for a violation of the code, and they give them a ticket, like my neighbor got one for $400 for a septic tank, code violation, okay? They came in and they met with the code enforcement officer and they paid the ticket. I mean, every code enforcement violation, every admin violations, they can file an appeal, they don't pay anything for that? They just file an
They
appeal?
can file an appeal without
It doesn't
paying
cost
anything, and if they're found not liable, not guilty of violating
And the
that law,
second-
then the town doesn't receive any.
And how often does that happen?
Uh,
Of all the code violations, the admin citations that we write, how often does that happen? Because let's put this in
I don't
context.
know, I'm not the code enforcement person.
Well, it doesn't happen that often.
All right, so,
I'm gonna move approval of item 3G as presented.
is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded, roll call.
To adopt the ordinance 530. Roll call vote, Councilmember Bowen,
Aye.
Councilmember Curlton,
No.
Vice Mayor Lauder,
Aye.
Councilmember Rollins,
Aye.
Mayor Tyler.
Aye. Move on to item number 4. We got any? I do have one question, if I could go back a second. Right, if we want to, there's things in the one we just voted for that I'm comfortable with. What's the, if we want to down the road for medicine, it doesn't take into, to put a time frame, to clarify, what's that process?
Well, that's set forth in your master fee schedule. And
Well, I'm talking about the, what's,
the
what's,
actual,
does it start over at the end of the year, you start with number 1 again? What I don't want to do is have people penalize
Well,
continually, so.
the fine is an annual fine. It's $100 first time, $250 second, or $200 second,
What's an
and
annual?
$500. And so it's not as though the town's trying to be punitive. Frankly, this is a non-punitive approach.
All right. Okay, I have anything from the public? That is not on the agenda, this is the time to come forward and bring anything you want to discuss.
I have one part of
Okay.
public communication.
Sure.
We're going to do public hearing first.
You have a public hearing.
Do I have a public, okay, sorry. Public hearing, go ahead, 5A. So we're going to go ahead and conduct a public hearing to consider the planning commission recommendations for the town council adoption of text amendments to the town's land use regulations contained in the Paradise Municipal Code, Title 17. If adopted, the amendment would affect municipal code sections related to home occupation regulations with the objective of permitting the establishment of cottage food operations.
Thank you. This item will be presented by Craig Baker, Community Development Director.
Thank you. Good evening, council. As our mayor's just explained, this item's been put on your agenda for you to consider a planning commission resolution recommending some amendments to our zoning code regulations, specifically our existing home occupations, in order to accommodate what the state has coined cottage food operations, or CFOs. On January 1st of this year, Assembly Bill 1616 became law in California. It's otherwise known as the California Homemade Food Act, and it essentially declares that cottage food operations are to be considered as accessory residential land uses, and local jurisdictions must adopt a process for permitting them in residential zones subject to certain standards. Cottage food operation is an enterprise within a private home in which homemade food products are prepared or packaged for direct sales from the facility or indirect sales to consumers in an off-site location. Among other things, the law places the following requirements on CFOs. They must secure registration or permit from the local county health agency. They must restrict operation of the CFO to portions of the home designated in the registration or the permit issued by the county health agency. There are limitations on the gross receipts that can be generated by the CFO, and they can only make foods that are considered to be non-hazardous by the state public health officer. Food items that don't easily perish, food items that aren't typically associated with toxic reactions and so on. The state law allows jurisdictions to take 3 approaches with regard to CFOs. Permit them outright as accessory residential uses anywhere in residential zones. Grant a non-discretionary permit, that is a permit that's simply subject to certain standards and no discretion. Or apply require the CFOs to apply for something like a use permit where some discretion could be applied. Our review of the state law, both at a staff level and with the town attorney, included a review of approaches other agencies have taken and a review of our existing regulations. And we felt from the onset that the accommodating CFOs would best fit into our existing home occupation permit regulations, at least primarily by virtue of the fact that they are a home occupation in the purest sense. On May 21st of this year, 2013, the Planning Commission conducted a hearing to consider a resolution to recommend to the council the adoption of text amendments that were developed jointly by staff and the town attorney. The Planning Commission during that meeting conducted their public hearing and adopted Resolution 1303, and the resolution contained in the resolution are the identification of various text amendments that are designed to accommodate CFOs. The three primary things that these text definitions do, or these text amendments would do, is establish a definition for cottage food operations and require that they have a valid operating permit for the existing septic system serving the affected residents if they are a home occupation like cottage food operation that has the potential to generate additional wastewater in addition to that that's customarily associated with the home. The third primary objective of the text amendments was to amend the home occupation permit regulations specifically to accommodate the requirements of AB 1616 and make reference to them. I want to emphasize here that the amendments to these regulations won't necessarily change the way we approach home occupations, but I do want to point out that it's been a matter of practice for us to take a closer look at home occupations that generate additional wastewater by examining their septic system, by occasionally requiring an upgrade to that septic system to accommodate additional wastewater flows. If these amendments are passed as proposed and recommended by your planning commission, then we will no longer be doing that. We'll simply be verifying that the existing septic system serving the dwelling has a valid and current operating permit, which is required for residents in any case. So the attached ordinance document, the ordinance attached to this council agenda summary, outlines these proposed and recommended changes. It would ultimately, if adopted as recommended, would result in a requirement that the CFO operator secure the issuance of a town-approved home occupation permit. The home occupation permit fee is currently $266.60. It's with our adoption of the fee schedule. It's scheduled to go up a couple of dollars to $270.03. This is a one-time fee. It's not an annual fee, and the permit does not expire. It does not need to be renewed. It's a one-time fee, a one-time permit. There are several other attachments attached to the agenda summary, I would be happy to answer any questions for you. The Planning Commission and your staff determined that the proposed amendments are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act because there's no potential for an environmental, significant adverse environmental effect by their adoption. Again, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. But my recommendation to you tonight is to concur with the secret determination adopted by the Planning Commission, waive the first reading of the ordinance, and introduce the ordinance this evening.
So if someone has a home cottage business going on and they move to another site, do they have to reapply at that point?
The permits are, like all land use permits, they're site specific.
Okay, so then they would at that point have to go through a new permitting process?
Yes.
How many home occupation permits do we have issued?
You know, through this process, I've been asked that on several occasions, and unfortunately, we don't have a method of tracking them. I could throw out a number and say 75, 100. I could be low. I just don't have any way of determining that. We don't have a permit tracking program that goes back that far. These were adopted.
Because since they're a one-time thing, we don't.
How do people know they even have to get a permit for this?
As you would for anything else that you do in your home. we do a required public notice in the newspaper.
Yeah, but someone gets their hair license and they start cutting hair. I mean,
Typically, either a neighbor might call, but typically when people want to start a business at home, they come into town hall and they ask, they say that they want to start a business, they ask, there's a business license, and then what they need to do to have business out of their home. And then at that point, we do a home occupation.
right, if they're found out that they have one going, what I'm getting at is there a penalty for that?
No,
They
9
just
times out of
start-
10,
they just go
more
through
than
the
that,
process.
right, we would simply require them to get a home occupation.
So going forward, is this something that we put into a cell-up that we can keep track of that?
Yes. And we've been doing so since we've had a cell, yes.
And so how many are there tracked in the cell? You don't know, you
No,
can't run a search. on it.
You know, I can only go back, 3 years or so, and so it's hardly a meaningful number, really.
And because they go with
And
the
so the
property.
way that, but can I finish? So the way that we would know is you'd have to go kind of by file, by parcel of it and see if there's a home occupation.
Yes.
That's pretty much it. It's kind of a-
Yes, you know, there are some printed files that might allow us to come up with a better number than that. We haven't made that effort.
Well, from this point on, are there any plans to establish a file, electronic tracking system for those types of permits?
Yes, that's been done.
That's going to be,
That's
done.
what is in a cell, right, though, I was asking.
We've been doing that for several years.
Yeah, since we started with that about 3 years ago.
I heard Commissioner, I just want to clarify. And I want to thank Mr. Baker and the staff for all this information they put together. A lot of work went into it, and it's very comprehensive. I had a lot of questions, and then as I read, all of the questions were answered after reading 1616. Thank you.
I'd like to add one more thing, if I could. Subsequent to the Planning Commission's consideration and adoption of their resolution, and during the discussion that led up to that adoption, there was a concern expressed by some commission members that somehow our approach would change and we would, that nonprofits and the church bake sales might get caught up in some kind of a dragnet. And so since that concern was raised, they also asked for a legal opinion from our town attorney. Our town attorney generated the legal opinion that I provided you a copy of on the dais there before our meeting here. And as a result of that concern and as a result of some of his research, he's amended the text slightly in the proposed resolution document that would allow nonprofits to have occasional bake sales and not be subject to the CFO regulations.
The only problem that I saw with that amendment that he did, and I talked to Dwight about it as we got here, and he took it from state law, this thing about,
It's in the text of the
That
law.
what would be included in a.
yeah, you know, because we can't exempt it, that thing about no more than 3 days during a 90-day period. That is, to me, is like, I mean, first of all, it's going to attract, but it's really restrictive. Because a lot of nonprofits do things, I mean, there are nonprofits for 2 years ago, every Thursday night at the Thursday night market, the chamber put on, a nonprofit served food to raise money for their nonprofit. Some of those did it, you know, multiple times within a month.
Out of their house?
Yeah, they make, well, wherever, I mean, you know, if you, a bake sale or potlucks or any of that stuff, I mean, the church and all those things that they do when they make the cookies for them. But when you have this language that's just taken out of state law, 3 times in a 90-day period, just seem, if we're gonna exempt nonprofits, let's exempt them, you know, let them do it. And because, first of all, we know a way to track that, and how you're gonna know. And the people that are doing, this whole thing, this 1616 that came out was for cottage food. It's like Paradise Pepper Sauce. They started in their kitchen. They have to rent a commercial kitchen because the county health department regulates them. They had to rent commercial kitchen space in Chico in order to produce that stuff. This law was to let them, Lori Noble Orchards, got the first one in the county, got the first cottage food permit from the county, in the county to do her apple butter and applesauce. So now she can make it and sell it there at her farm or at farmers markets. And so that's just a little bit more background.
Any other questions? Are there any cards?
Can we do that, Dwight? Can we take out that
Well,
language?
you can take out the fundraising language if you wish. The problem is that if you don't expressly state that it's exempt or not considered a cottage food operation, you have included it because the definition would grab the same type of thing you're talking about with everything else and say if
I
I
think
want to leave the exemption in, I just want to take the 3 days of a 90-day
well,
period.
the problem with that is then you'd have a 100% exemption for
They're 100%
anyone who
non-profit.
says they're doing.
Well, they got-
Well, they'd have to have a 501c3 or
So
something.
then
They'd have
we
to
would need
have.
to add that to it because it doesn't say tax exempt nonprofit. That just says fundraising
No, it
activities.
needs to be a 501c3.
So what is the language we can put in there, Dwight?
So food preparation relating to a fundraising activity by
Okay, 501c1. Tax exempt.
a federally tax exempt.
Okay.
501c3.
What could be some other?
Yeah, we don't want to tie it to a section of the law because there's, that's a
There's
charitable operation and
There's others that
religious.
didn't say.
School could have one.
that-
There's educational,
It
Yeah,
says
code,
federally
work training
exempt.
center.
Federally
Tax
exempt.
exempt organization.
That way they can just do that.
And that was in the cottage food operation definition?
Yeah, well, that would be, but I'll draft it, but it's in the definition where it says cottage food operation, and it's the second sentence, food preparation relating to fundraising activity by a federally tax exempt organization.
When we say not-for-profit, is there a tax exempt organization for political?
They can't have a fundraiser.
Well, I don't know that, you know, I mean, this is
IRS.
not designed for that. You know, this is designed for nonprofits who are trying to do some things. I don't consider the Republican Party who's trying to pour a cap.
Charitable.
Yeah,
You're talking
charitable.
charitable. Yeah, because there are a lot of nonprofit types that aren't.
Yeah, that it needs to be charitable.
And strike the 3 days within a 90-day period?
Yeah, that goes out, but shall not be considered a cottage food operation for still.
That's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay. Do you want any cards?
It's a public hearing, that you should open the public
Okay, it's
hearing.
open for public.
But I have no cards to
Okay.
answer your question.
Anybody like to speak on this issue?
Anybody except for them.
Good. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the hearing and bring it back then to council.
I had a question, I can't remember what.
Okay? Is there a motion then?
I make a motion that we approve this with the changes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Yes.
Rowland.
Aye.
The school board, Tim.
Councilmember Cullen.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rutter.
Aye.
Councilmember Rawlings.
Aye.
Mayor Titus.
Aye. Okay. Next one.
Mayor
Now, public communication.
Okay. Now is the time, if anybody has anything that is not on the agenda to bring, come forth before the council to discuss it. We cannot, because it's not agendized, make any decisions tonight. And we got to limit our comments on any of these topics. Does anybody have anything?
have a card from Warren Negro.
Go for it.
Thank you. Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor, Manager, distinguished members of our audience. Tonight, I want to just bring you up to date on some actions from the Paradise Garden Club because, you know, as a system full of, a group full of volunteers, we just love to pass on good news when we get it. During the weekend of June 1 and 2, we had our annual garden tour, but that's the same date that the California Garden Clubs holds their annual convention. This year it was in San Diego. We had representatives there, of course. They came back with 3 awards for the Garden Club in Paradise, one of which was related to community beautification. So I wanted you to be brought up to date with that. It had to do with the input from the service provided to the mound at the library, the 2 triangles on Skyway, the Daffodils Across the Ridge program, and the additional planting that was done at Terry Ash during the remodel of the landscaping there of Skyway. Pretty significant. We got a couple other awards too. One was for improving our membership, but also for our contribution to Penny Pines. 62 years ago, a pine tree used to cost a penny to plant. The U.S. Forest Service did that on behalf of contributions for that. They didn't want a penny, they wanted several dollars, of course. Now it's a little more than that. It costs over $66 for a plantation, which is 1 acre full of pine trees. We got an award for the most growth in contributions based on per capita. So for about 122 members in our garden club, we have contributed to nearly 300 plantations since we started Penny Pines. Most of this, because of the size of our garden club and our contribution, we can designate, so it goes to Plumas and Tehama forest areas, which is ours. Even the Orange County system of garden clubs and the San Diego area garden clubs don't have a high enough participation of people volunteering in their garden clubs to be able to designate where their plantation goes. And Little Old Paradise does. How about that? We got an interesting request not long ago, because a member from the West Lake Garden Club, which is in Sacramento, which has a huge garden club, and members from the Sutter Buttes Garden Club, whether or not they could come to Paradise and tour Paradise during the spring of 2014 to see the daffodils. And the question was, can we handle a 53-passenger bus? I didn't know how to answer that. But I want to say, bring as many as you can. I think that'd be great. But I don't know. I'm thinking you probably can't get a 53-passenger bus in the dog park. But they can get to Terry Ash, they can get to Aquatic Park. I don't know where else they'd be able to get. But I'd like to call them back and say, bring a 53-passenger bus. We'll get them around here somehow.
They can probably take them up to the fire station there and they can walk.
Nice little walk.
They can walk over
Good point.
Moore Road and probably enough room to turn around there. Woody wouldn't mind if they turn around his driveway.
I have to move all the beer cans from the baseball players.
Thank you.
Anyway, I thought it was time to pass on something good about what's going on.
Congratulations.
You know, when you say, and Ward, and you know what, and when you say, when you're up there sharing positive things with us, you're not hollering. I really appreciate that.
Thanks.
Good job. Anything else? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to item 7A. Consider approving agreement between the Town of Paradise and PID accepting $32,000 for the proposed installing the 17.17 overlay of Billy Road between Fern and Posey. Thereafter, PID will have no further obligation to restore Billy Road.
This item will be presented by Mark Maddox, Associate Civil Engineer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Tonight, we're here to talk about Billy Road, which is a town-maintained collector, and this road has historically been difficult to maintain due to prevalent drainage issues and increased volume since the roadway was originally designed and constructed. On March 29, 2012, Paradise Irrigation District requested an encroachment permit to perform a water main replacement project between Posey and Fern on Billy Road. PID has completed all work on the subject project, excepting final trench restoration on the service laterals. Per the plan, on an approved encroachment permit, the PID was required to install a 3-inch hot mix asphalt layer along all these trenches, and this, as a staff level, we determined would only marginally improve the road ride quality. In March 2013, year later after the permit was approved, staff approached PID with the possibility of finding a solution which would have a better benefit to our community. We requested PID prepare a statement of costs for what they were going to spend to finalize the trench paving, and they responded with the amount of $32,000. We decided this was a good amount for us to possibly explore the alternative of a full width overlay to go straight over the existing road surface. In May, PID gave a staff level indication that they were on board with this type of an agreement to contribute that $32,000 they were going to spend on their project towards a greater town project overlay town project. Understanding staff that the construction season is in full swing, we informally did an overlay project that we estimated would be about $70,000 between Posey and Fern. Bid results from those from that solicitation is before council tonight. We received 3 bids from Folsom Lake Asphalt, Franklin Construction, and Knife River Construction. The lowest bidder, Folsom Lake Asphalt, has a bid of $72,000, $72,296.10. Our engineer's estimate was $70,000 for this project. Staff is recommending the award of contract 1304 for the Billy Road overlay to Folsom Lake Asphalt, as their bid met the requirements of the contract plans and specifications. To facilitate this agreement, the town attorney prepared a formal agreement as attachment 1 for council's approval and PID's approval to implement this project. The schedule for these efforts, depending on the council's action tonight, which would be contingent upon PID's board approval on June 19th. Staff would move forward, if approved by both agencies, with this project for construction later this summer. Funding for this project, in addition to the $32,000 contributed by PID, we would be allocating $40,000 of gas tax funds out of our budget towards this project. With that, I think I'll close it and open up to any questions.
Any questions for Mark?
Well, yeah, I apologize, I didn't ask you before.
Sure.
This overlay is a .17.
Right, it's a 2-inch overlay.
That comes out to 2 inches.
It's a 2-inch overlay. It's a contractor preferred measurement for determining quantities.
What prep work do they do prior to that? I mean, there's some 4-inch dips in that.
Right. That is one emphasis I'd like to make. You know, to fix Billy Road completely requires full reconstruction. And we've discussed that in previous meetings debating about the microsurfacing project. We definitely see this as a short-term fix. Ideally, we'd like to excavate the entire road, put in a proper road base and the asphalt section. With this opportunity, unique with PID, about to spend some money that may not provide a very good benefit, we thought it'd be good to explore this temporary fix, which would extend the life of Billy Road in this section.
Like we did on South Levy?
Correct.
So would they?
So South Lake was a 2-inch overlay?
Correct, but it was in better shape to start with, but
And there is grinding, there is some.
Yep, there's some conform grinding at all the driveways and before and after, at the limits of the project.
So they do approaches at each road and driveways?
Correct.
And don't they grind the whole thing up to get the 2 inches to stick?
Well, no, the overlay is over the top. The conform grind is on the limits and on the approaches, on the driveways.
So there'll be 2 inches of new asphalt in the 4-inch pothole?
No,
Correct?
the way that the asphalt will have, it's kind of a leveling course, which will help reduce some of that.
2 inches probably more than average, there's going to be more.
Right, it's going to be difficult.
I would be able to-
We're not going to, hold them to filling a 4-inch pothole with 2 inches, but we're going to get a level ride, which will serve the town, much greater than the existing per plan alternative.
I think this, for the citizens, because they're tax dollars. PID, we pay for that, and we've said many times, they're town's roads, they're PID's roads, and they're the citizens' roads. And people don't really care who owns that pothole. They just want it to go away. So I think this is a great start, and if we can experiment on this piece of road and see if this works and do more things like this, I think it's a win for everybody, especially the people that have to get their alignment redone and stuff.
And for the record, you felt the 32,000
Was indeed appropriate. This $32,000 of statement of cost that they provided staff was just for the laterals. They've already final paved the main line, and so that's unfortunate that our work that was already done, but we're working with them as far as project phasing on future projects.
Okay,
So,
excellent. Good job. I think it's great.
Are there any cards on this?
No cards.
Okay. Anyone want to speak to this? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close it, bring it back. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of item 7A as presented.
Second.
Roll call vote. Councilmember Bowen?
Aye.
Councilmember Cotton?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martin?
Aye.
Councilmember Rollins?
Aye.
And Mayor Titus?
Aye.
Thank you, Mark. That was
Good job, Mark.
Good job.
that Alder also worked with Mark to get some savings there so we can get the gas tax funds, and he's working with the road crew to make sure that they're going to stay busy and occupied and working, doing the rest of the town, so good job, you guys.
And Mark, you had some experience using Folsom Lake paving before?
I've worked with the project manager who used to own his own business out of Marysville on a very large project, and I'm confident in their abilities.
Okay.
Their bid's checked out, it looks good. It's really the service they're providing, and we'll stay on them for that.
Okay, move on to item 8, discussion consideration directing staff to include a budget allocation for the purchase of a memorial wreath for presentation by the mayor or designated public official at the Veterans Memorial Day celebration in Paradise to honor local men and women who have served in our nation's armed forces. Councilman Rollins.
Oh, thank you. I requested this be put on the agenda for discussion. However, I would like to just say that we're able to sit here tonight, and we all know that, so I don't have to beat that dead horse, but we're able to sit here tonight because of the sacrifice made by our military people and veterans. But over by the train station park, there's I don't know, y'all may be aware of it, there's a nice wall there with the names of those people locally that have served our country and served, and some of them have given their lives for us to be able to sit here and free of tyranny and conduct the business of this town and agree to disagree with one another in a civil manner. I feel very strongly. I went to the memorial service that was here this last Memorial Day. It was originally to be held in the cemetery, but we were moved to the Veterans Hall. And the hall was full. We had a pretty good showing. Matter of fact, I see Mr. Doug Teeter back there, and he was the guest speaker. Done a very fine job. Thank you, Doug. And at the end, a lot of agencies, went and put a wreath up front of the stage, and Town of Paradise didn't put one out. I felt kind of bad about that. I think that the Town of Paradise should honor its veterans, and that's the reason for us being on the agenda. However, after looking at it and reading it, I still agree that we need a memorial service for our veterans, both living and those who have died for us. I only got one phone call that was against it. I can't imagine anybody really being against spending the money for a wreath. I don't know how much that would cost. I don't think it would cost any more than $300, $400, maybe $500. However, it does come out of our general fund. So in order to identify a proper funding, I would like to drop this from today's agenda and bring it back up on another agenda at a later date after we've identified a funding source for it, and we will have more information to give to you. So I'm asking that it be sent back to maybe staff for further consideration as to the funding and where it's going to come from. But the Town of Paradise does, in my opinion, need to step up and recognize those veterans. And so I would recommend that it be dropped from this agenda until funding can be approved, or we can open it for discussion.
Any other comments? So you're basically asking us to table it for now?
Basically, because there were no figures mentioned and the funding source has not been identified.
So we need both of those.
Excuse me?
So we need the cost, when you're looking at
The
cost
cost
wise,
of, yeah.
and potential funding source, whether it's from online sales of surplus or however you want to, whatever we can do as a council.
I don't care where the money comes from, as long as we have a wreath there in the name
All right.
of our town.
Okay.
And I've already got one commitment for $100, but I'll see 100 raise one. But we need to really do this professionally and do it as a town body, not as individuals trying to leave this alone, but as, to represent the town.
Or is it concurrence, we can go ahead and table this then? Okay, and it will be tabled. Okay, any council reports? Thank you.
I went to 3-quarter this last month, and they're going through some tough times. And still waiting for Paradise to make a decision as to our participation. So they,
How much is it?
they're not under pressure, but
Do we have to pay for a membership or something?
yeah, they're looking for membership. And I think it's something we want to do, and I don't know if we have that in our next budget, but anyway, that's something we probably need to talk about. People are, some cities are having to drop out. There's 2 of them that have had to drop out already. And we know there's 2 others in our county that are trying to stay alive.
Do you know the 2 minutes dropped?
I believe Gridley and Portland dropped, I believe. I'm not hoping
The 2 with money?
that. 2 that are probably okay, yeah. But they're okay because they're watching the dollars too, so. But they're just saying financially, they just cannot. So, we need to make that decision. But
How much is it?
I think they're asking 6,000, I think it is.
I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, it's between 4,000 and 6,000.
In the spirit of negotiations, they're willing to negotiate. They said, we just want people in, and we know we gotta get through these tough times, so in with anything is great, and then we'll go from there.
Right. Anyone else have anything?
Well, the BCAG, which is Butte County Association of Governments, did not meet. They didn't have a forum. I would have been a forum. However, quorum, thank you very much. My Chevrolet truck has never let me down that day. Wouldn't start when you know the very well. But anyway, we didn't have a quorum, and so we were unable to meet. They met, but unable to conduct any business.
Okay, and the Air Quality Control Board canceled.
They canceled, they didn't have an agenda, I think.
All right.
Got nothing really to report other than to remind people that the Tuesday morning farmers markets have started at the CMA Church, and the party in the park farmers market on Thursdays kicks off on the 20th. So there's what that's worth.
I went to the LTF meeting with Mr. Lauder last month, and then this month we had the follow-up meeting where they approved their 5-year plan for the county on garbage. And I went to Memorial Day service with Councilmember Rollins. I attended the Diversity Festival last Saturday, and that was interesting.
Is it cool and comfortable out there?
It was hot. And other than that,
What are you doing on Thursday? What would you do?
You know what, on Thursday, there's a League of California Cities meeting, policy committee meetings in Sacramento. Mr. Waters on public safety meeting. He will be there. I'm on the employee relations meeting. I will not be there. But coming up, for everybody's edification, in July 19th, mark it on your calendars, the Sacramento Valley Division of the League of California Cities, of which we are members, and I am the president, is having their general membership meeting in the city of Sacramento. In my 9 years on the council and involved with the league, it is the first time the city of Sacramento has participated in a division meeting. Our division is the largest division in the state. We are, 58 cities and 18 counties. And that day, it's an afternoon meeting, Friday afternoon meeting and dinner. And we have a speaker from the chief actuary from CalPERS will be one of our speakers in the ILG. So I encourage anybody that's interested in what CalPERS is going to be talking about, the smoothing and the rate increases and how they're going to do with all that. So it might be a worthwhile meeting to attend.
July 19th.
July 19th. I'll send out details when they come.
All right. John and I did 2 events. We had a Veterans Hall, a wall over at the Feather River Gracious Living Retirement Home. They dedicated a wall with plaques of their residents who had served in the military. And so we did a dedication of that. For the next following Saturday, there was a USO kind of program over at Oak Mill honoring the soldiers and the wounded warriors. So we also did an event over there. So it's,
Also celebrating the USO, United Service Organization, that serves around the world, servicemen who are away from home, get dances and cook food and things of that nature, and recognizing them for the service.
I also celebrated National Donut Day last Friday. And now we're
Town manager, anything from you?
Well, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the farmers market party in the park. The town is a partner or, I don't know if it's a partner, it's co-sponsor with the chamber and the Feather River Hospital on this event. And it's something that the staff volunteers for, and the EOC volunteers use it as a training. We do road closures, so we close off Black Olive, Public Works, and Paul did volunteers his time too. And what we do is we close off the road so they can put the vendors in the street. They have music, live music every single week. They have the farmers and they have food. And they are also going to be doing one on July 4th because that falls on a Thursday. So it's going to be a fun little day. So if anyone's there, if any of the council wants to volunteer and put on a safety vest as we did last year almost every week and get a radio and get to be a EOC volunteer for the week. So there's that. The other thing I wanted to invite the mayor to Rotary Thursday at noon. And this Thursday, if you're available for lunch, I'll buy lunch, and you can present the plaque to Rotary at their meeting. That'll be fun, and they would love it. They would love to have you there. That would be special. And that's about it.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn.
Adjourn to, we have a successor agency.
And also, though, I would like to adjourn this meeting to a date certain.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Let's try to the 25th of June.
June, where we have a budget meeting, and we will be doing our budget at that meeting, so anyone interested?
Good. Well, for the record, the council should please adjourn to June 25th, 2013 at 6 p.m. For the purpose of closing or adjourn the regular meeting.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moving second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So this one can do roll call.
First time you don't say it.
You can have that donut, Jim.
All right, so we're moving right into our successor agency. Call it to order. We've already had the pledge, and we forego the roll call, but just recognize that.
All directly.
All directly. And
You could ask if there's anybody that has any public communication
and public communications, if there's anyone left who would like to come and speak to us, anything, now is the time.
Seeing none, I'll move approval of the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Second, call it.
Okay. Roll call.
Director Rowland,
Aye.
Director Norton,
Aye.
and I guess Vice Chair Water,
Aye.
Director Ross,
Aye.
and Chair Titus.
Aye. Okay, item 4, consider adopt resolution 1301, a resolution of the successor agency of the town to the Paradise Redevelopment Agency approving the long-range property management plan pursuant to the Health and Safety Code section listed.
Okay, and this item will be presented by Gina Will, our Finance Director, and before she presents this item, I would like to remind the successor agency directors that if this item is approved tonight, it will then be scheduled for an oversight board committee meeting, and if they approve it, it will go on to the Department of Finance for final approval.
I can't just make a motion that we approve the long-range plan?
You would.
I mean, we've read it, it's outstanding, nice color pictures. Gina can save her
She
voice.
stayed the whole time and talked.
Yeah, we can make it to Oxford Thai food before he closes.
Gina, are you okay letting this go off the packet?
Absolutely.
Do you have any corrections or changes?
I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, Ben.
Okay. Any cards on this?
No cards?
Okay.
I mean, there's nobody in the public here, we've read it, we know what it's about.
Okay, any comments from council or a motion?
I'll move approval of the long-range property management plan.
Second.
Bowen,
Aye.
Pelton,
Aye.
Meyer,
Really nice fellow.
Rollins,
Aye.
Chair Jacks.
Oh, yeah, you had a PowerPoint?
That's a large journal.
Photos and all that.
How was that? Well, she was prepared.
So, Dwight, once the oversight board takes an action on this, at which point then can we like start doing something? Once they, does it go back to the DOF?
It has to go to
DOF has
Department of
to,
Finance.
and once they sign up, then we can like raise grants.
Yeah, they will do whatever.
But we have to wait till the DOF signs off.
That's right. They keep doing
I think that.
Hope you didn't mind me suggesting
Not at
shortening that
all,
out.
not at all. I
You
can
got
actually get.
kids to go home to.
Yeah.